I know we do. I agree. My sister, I was just wishing her happy birthday in New Jersey. She's 71 today. And of course, I talked about 999, which is a magic moment. And she wants to watch Obama 2.5 an hour. So the goal will be to, she's going to turn on the system over there. As soon as she turns it on, we'll be ready. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are now the committee meeting of Transportation Committee is now going to be in session. I'm the new chair. I'm Bill Rosendahl. And joining me is my esteemed colleague, Mr. Paul Koretz, who's from the 5th District. If you note that Mr. Labange will be up eventually, and so will Richard Alarcon and Bernard Parks. That is the new committee of the Transportation Committee. Some of you know historically that when the council goes through its process, which is July 1, where you elect your president, then the president appoints committee chairs. And about a year ago, I put in a request, could I become chair of something I find extremely challenging, and I take the position very strongly on most of these projects. I want to get it done in my lifetime. And you know, the Beatles, which we honor today, say something to the effect that, will you still remember me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Well, I'm 64, so my goal is to get some of this stuff happening so I can get on these high-speed rails, or I can get in a bus-only lane, and I can do these other things. And I don't want to say I'm running out of time, but we got to get moving. And we need to get moving on all of our transportation issues. But I'll save my major inauguration speech of this for the next meeting on the 23rd, because I know you're all here for one issue. And that issue has to do with item number 3. Could you please read what item number 3 is?
Sure. Item number 3 is a DOT report in response to Rosendahl Koretz's motion relative to the Wilshire Boulevard Bus-Only Lane project update.
Okay, Mr. Koretz, when he joined the council, as a courtesy, asked me, could we get some understanding of where you are on the Wilshire bus lane? So that was the point of putting it on the agenda, was to get an update from city staff first, before we have public comment, as to what has gone on, both from the DOT and from Metro. And if they could come on up and bring us up to date, and especially for Mr. Koretz, put it in the historic perspective of how we got to where we are today. And then, of course, where are we today on that bus lane? And then for Mr. Koretz to hear public comments, as well as to ask as many questions as he wants with this issue. This is not an action issue today. It is an informative issue. And if we take action, that would happen at another date if we were going to do anything at this particular point in time. So with that in mind, we're going to go forward with item number 3.
Good afternoon. My name is Kang Hu. I'm a senior transportation engineer in LA DOT. With me today is our 2 representatives from MTA, Brad McCusker, also Rex Gephardt. Last year, the City Council authorized DOT to transfer $200,000 to MTA for the preparation of environmental assessment study of the project. MTA then retained a consultant team to conduct a limited public outreach in traffic modeling and impact analysis. The technical analysis is now complete, and the results indicate that a number of intersections along Wilshire and also parallel streets will experience significant traffic impact that cannot be fully mitigated to a level of insignificance. In addition, we have both strong support throughout the Wilshire corridor and also some strong opposition from several communities. Based on these findings, staff from MTA and DOT, we determined that a full EIR should be prepared for the environmental clearance. This does introduce some delays, about 10 months, but it is prudent for us to have the full EIR ready to sustain any legal challenges. Also, during the full EIR process, the communities will have plenty of opportunities to comment on the project and also assist the development of a locally preferred alternative. We have consulted with FTA, and they concur with our approach. The federal funding of $22 million is still available for this project, but FTA maintained that they will not fund a project that does not have extensive peak hour bus only lane. The total cost for the full EIR, including the already completed technical analysis, is about $820,000, and the city agreed from the beginning to share half of the cost. Last year we already paid MTA $200,000. Therefore, in this particular council action, we're requesting the city council's approval to pay another $210,000 to MTA so they can get the consultant
Let me
team
interrupt you at
going.
one point. Where will that 210 come from?
It will be coming from the transportation grant fund, and which was already appropriated in the previous year. Yeah. So this is a necessary investment for all of us to obtain the $22 million federal grant. If we don't get the proper environmental clearance for this project, then the region will lose the $22 million federal grant. In terms of schedule, we would like to start the public scoping meetings right after the City Council approves this item. Will be the end of September and beginning of October. And we plan to have a draft EIR ready by next February, and then MTA board will take action on this item before the City Council act on it. We plan to complete the EIR process by June 2010. At that time, once we obtain the FTA's approval to proceed, then we can start the pavement repair of the 2 curb lanes that are badly damaged on Wilshire Boulevard. And that's the brief summary, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
One question real quickly. When did you all decide you wanted to do a full EIR? How did that come about?
It's about 2 months ago that we had extensive discussion with MTA, looking at the data. We find that a lot of intersections have significant impact, that we look at all the mitigation measures, we just couldn't mitigate to a level of insignificance. So those need to be fully disclosed to the public. And that's why EIR is really necessary to get this thing environmentally clear.
Gentlemen, do you want to add something from your perspective? Introduce yourselves and share with us.
I'm Brad McAllister. I'm the Executive Officer of Long Range Planning at Metro, and with me is Rex Gephardt, who's the Director of Regional Transit Planning, and he's the project manager of this project. We're very pleased to work with LADOT on this project. It's definitely an important project for Los Angeles County. And I think moving forward with the environmental impact report as is recommended is something Metro supports. We have had a round of public community meetings. We had 4 meetings last fall. And I think the combination of the comments we've heard from the public as well as looking at some of the preliminary technical analysis makes it important to do the environmental impact report. You know, it's still preliminary information, but going through the environmental impact report process will help us pinpoint, you know, the level of mitigation issues, what can be mitigated, what cannot be mitigated. And this action here isn't a decision point regarding the project. It's allowing us to move forward with the environmental impact analysis. It helps us understand this project. This will be coming back to you, as Kung said, for your approval at the end of the environmental process, and that's the real decision point as to whether what you've heard from us, which would be June of 2010, and that's the point at which, you know, we'll be looking to you to make a decision on whether this project should move forward or not. We do have the federal funding available to us, and FTA is looking for all of us to see how we proceed with this project, whether it's something that, if we do move forward with it, we have the federal funding for the project. If the decision is not to move forward with it, we will lose the federal funding and it will go back to feds for another project.
Very good. Did you want to add anything?
No, other than congratulations on your first meeting.
Gridlock, political, 2 hours late. Mr. Koretz, the pleasure of either the community speaking first or questions for staff or both, whatever you want to do.
I have a lot of questions, but maybe I could ask just a couple of the more significant ones first, and then go to hear the residents that are here, which is the main reason I cut out early, so we'd get a chance to hear them. I have a big question about whether the whole project works or not. If it works and it actually takes a significant amount of traffic off the street and places it in buses, then this is a huge success. My fear is that it could be the opposite, and you could be placing it into some areas that are very dense, particularly some in my district around the Westwood area, that whole condominium and apartment corridor that's very dense. What if it ties up traffic dramatically and the EIR shows that we can't even come close to mitigating those impacts? Do we look at omitting those areas? Do we look at not going forward with the project? Do we look at going forward with the project anyway and taking our chances? And if it turns out to be a chaotic disaster for an extended period of time, which I view as one scenario, it could work great. It could turn out that the people that use the bus have more convenience, but very few additional people that aren't already riding jump on. Then you would have a huge traffic disaster. So what do we do in the worst case scenarios?
Unfortunately, at this point, the Sergeant of Arms is here to order Mr. Koretz back downstairs. They sent him up because of their quorum issue.
Okay, well, I asked the question. Maybe my staff can listen to the answers and transmit the answers to those questions to me. And my apologies for, I did try to sneak out, but I'm back, back on the council floor.
God bless Paul for sneaking out. He got caught. He's got to go back. Yeah, I know.
Mr.
He's
Chair.
coming. Paul's coming.
Mr. Chair,
What do you say? Hold on. All right, you all heard the question. Did you hear the question? Okay, could you restate the question?
I understand that Councilman Koretz is concerned about certain segment of Wilshire Boulevard may have significant impact that cannot be mitigated if the things don't turn out well. Traffic gets jammed up, it's bad congestions, and then create a lot of problems to the communities. What do we do? My answer would be, during the environmental process, we are developing alternatives to the original project scope. There are several segments of Wilshire Boulevard that we are looking into, perhaps the not putting bus lanes because of different the traffic patterns or the capacity issues. So we are looking into that. And during the environmental process, the community can also provide input as what they think the Wilshire Boulevard bus lane will cause detrimental impacts to the community and to the traffic. If after the EIR is approved and the project implemented, we find that some of the impact is so severe that it impacts the quality of life for people for a long time, then I think we will certainly look at segment by segment and see what actions can be taken. But before we reach that point, we want to work with MTA to come up with incentive programs for people to ride on the buses on Wilshire Boulevard. While we were waiting for this meeting to start, Rita had suggested that we could work with MTA to come up with some kind of a free pass, bus pass program when the project is inaugurated. That kind of entice people to leave their cars and ride on the bus. And that's something that we will work with MTA to encourage and promote the transit ridership so that people will drop their cars and then alleviate the congestion. So we expect there some traffic will be diverted to Parallel Street, and there will be some traffic that will choose to ride transit.
Basically, Mr. Koretz, for everybody's information, wanted to know what would happen about some of the issues that he learned as a candidate and people in the community have suggested to him. And basically, the response so far is that's what the whole EIR is about, to explore all those aspects and to raise those questions and to either come up with plans that make sense in the EIR or, the EIR will say what it will say, but it is a process that will go until June of 2010.
When the meeting is done, you can read their biographies if you want to on
Oh,
TV.
sorry. That's how I was checking.
Oh, okay. This 999 business today is real nuts. Okay, that's, like I've never experienced this before. So the initial comment, what you've heard from city staff, is Mr. Koretz's positioning, which is concern, is the number one issue he's raised. What does this really mean? Gets addressed, if I'm not mistaken, in the EIR process. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what else to say about that point. You know what I'm going to probably want to do, because I know a lot of people have come and gone back and forth, is for the record, since this is being taped, and there are journalists and people in the community listening into it, that if you don't mind, I would like to have some public comments at this point, and then I don't think we'll be in a position to vote other than to continue it till the 23rd, where we can obviously extend the hours of that meeting and have a less, more thorough, less confused set of circumstances than we have presently now. And I'm a one-member committee, so I can't really make decisions until I have a quorum here to actually do things, including passing it out. I could send it to council without note and let the council discuss this in terms of the additional $200,000, but the money has been allocated. It's obviously going to be my recommendation, Mr. City Attorney, you tell me how I can do this, that we should obviously spend that money in conjunction with MTA's money and go forward with this EIR process so that we're in better shape of understanding the options we have in front of us. Does that make sense, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes. There's already been, as I understand it, several $100,000 that we put into this. We need to provide another $210,000, and so that this needs to go forward from this committee back to City Council, so that City Council as a whole could take up that allocation issue. I wanted to, before you take testimony from the people in the audience, ask one short question of staff that are before you. It was mentioned that a number of intersections, based on your initial research, would experience traffic impacts that could not be mitigated to a level of insignificance. And my question is whether those impacts are construction impacts, operational impacts, or both.
It's mostly the operational impact. The construction impact will be minimum.
Okay. And Mr. Koretz has returned.
Not only Mr. Koretz, but Mr. Alakan and Mr. Lavange. We are a four-member committee now. This is rather robust. And so now we have a working quorum of four. And we can, and colleagues, let me just share with you what we've done so far. We need to go through the entire agenda and either move things forward and so on and so forth, which we will do. But we've taken out of order item number 3, which is the Wilshire bus-only lane, out of respect for the community groups that have been waiting since 2 o'clock to discuss it. Colleagues, also, we had an initial presentation by staff as to where we are in this process. And if I could make some concluding comments about that, is that the staff of both Metro and DOT about 2 months ago concluded that they need to do a full EIR, that there are issues out there that need to be worked on, discussed, and developed, and that to do that we need to allocate another $210,000 from funds that have already been set aside under Proposition C to do that. With that in mind, colleagues, that would mean that they would do a full EIR, and we would have the results by June of 2010. The point for today, among other things, besides to bring us an update, and especially out of special respect for the new council member, to have that update, and the action that is going to be asked of us is to approve the additional $210,000 so that they can go forward with the EIR, and through that process come back to us with their conclusions. Mr. Koretz asked one fundamental question, which I would love for you to restate again for our colleagues' benefit.
Well, I don't know if I can restate it perfectly, but I had a lot of questions about the worst-case scenarios of this, because it could work well, and it could replace a lane of traffic with a lane of bus riders newly added to the system. It could also turn out that most of the folks that are going to ride the bus on Wilshire are already riding the bus, and we just wind up with substantial additional traffic, particularly in some congested areas like those in my district east of Westwood, where you have incredible density with all the high-rise condos and apartments. So how do we deal with that? Do we not include those areas? Obviously, we study them if an EIR goes forward. And the last piece of it, which I didn't ask, but we should also, is what if we reconstruct Wilshire Boulevard, we expend all the money, we do it, and it turns out to be a disaster, and we decide we can't continue with it? What happens to the federal dollars? We try it in good faith. It turns out a year later it's still a traffic nightmare and doesn't accomplish what we wanted. Can we go back and say, okay, things go back to the way they were in Wilshire because this didn't work?
Thank you. And for the record, could you please?
Sure. Just briefly, Councilman, during the EIR process, we are developing alternatives, and those alternatives could include some segments of Wilshire Boulevard being exempt from the bus-only lane. That's one. And then two is, once it's implemented, during the worst-case scenario, as you pointed out, if there's a disaster, then we will certainly work with MTA and FTA and see whether we could remove some of them. We've done that before. There was a segment west of 405 between Federal and Centinela. We had a demonstration project. It was operated for about 3-4 years, and then it was removed. Basically, for us to remove a bus-only lane, it's not that difficult. It's just the paint and the sign. So we certainly don't want to go there unless it's really a disaster. And I also pointed out earlier that we will be working with MTA to provide incentive during the opening day to get people to ride on the buses running on Wilshire Boulevard to promote the transit ridership, so people will choose to forego their cars and ride the buses on Wilshire Boulevard.
And also, do we know what we're expecting in terms of how much time will be removed from people's trips by doing the bus-only lane as opposed to the rapid buses, which are fairly successful already?
The benefits and the disadvantage of the issues were clearly documented in the 2007 Council report. We estimate the bus travel time will be reduced by about 24%, and the bus speed will increase about 30%. That's the benefit part. For the traffic part, we expect the traffic to be experiencing maybe 3 to 5 minutes additional delays if you travel the extensive segment of Wilshire Boulevard. So there will be negative impacts to the general traffic because the capacity will be taken away. So we hope that there will be traffic diverted to parallel streets, and also there will be some mode shift that will occur.
And that would be a relatively modest impact if it really is that light. If it was 3 minutes added to the trip, that certainly wouldn't be anywhere near the worst case scenario that I'm thinking of. In fact, it wouldn't be a substantial impact.
It depends on the trip length and also the time of day. It's very difficult to predict, but we did come up with an estimation.
Thank you.
I believe any parallel street stops at about San Vicente East, correct?
Yes.
Which 6th Street stops there, and then you go south to Olympic. Mm-hmm. So there's no real parallel streets through Beverly Hills that match Wilshire, no parallel streets through Westwood that match Wilshire.
Well, Olympic Boulevard is a little further.
But it's not parallel, it's perpendicular or X or whatever. How many, to the MTA, good afternoon, how many people, and if we focus on the rapid bus, which Councilman Corrett spoke of, how many people your stops are? Where's your stop in Beverly Hills? Do you stop at Santa Monica Boulevard?
Yes, we do.
Okay, now my thought is this, we just spent a lot of money on Little and Big Santa Monica, and Little Santa Monica is no Little Santa Monica anymore, it's all one Santa Monica. This Wilshire connection does not connect to Century City. If you are taking the rapid, you have to get off at Santa Monica Boulevard and walk or take transit to Century City.
Right.
Has anyone thought with the rapid bus, or whatever we're doing here, that we would go from Los Angeles, out Wilshire Boulevard, to Santa Monica Boulevard, then go west on Santa Monica Boulevard, and possibly north on Westwood into UCLA and west to the VA? Have you thought of that at all?
We have thought of making some connections along the Wilshire Boulevard corridor to Century City. Yes, we don't do that.
But what if you
right
took
now.
the 725 and you actually turned at Santa Monica Boulevard and you went west?
You're right, the
So 725 is the major rapid bus.
720 on Wilshire.
720.
Mm-hmm.
725 on what? What is the 725?
I don't know what the 725 is. I
Where's
don't
the
remember
754?
754, yes.
Where's that?
Vermont, right.
Vermont. Okay, very good. See, I had to talk to the bus riders union to know the numbers. You got to know your numbers. Okay. So, whatever the case may be, you have 725, of which one time I saw 5 of them all together at Highland, and I called John Cato and reported it. You know, it was amazing to see them all bunched together. What if you tried to feed more of that area as opposed to going straight out Wilshire? You're dedicated to Wilshire, but off Wilshire, there are some heavy populations. If there was rapid service to Century City, maybe more people would option the rapid service.
Well, there is a Santa Monica Rapid that goes...
No, but most people come down Wilshire. What's the number one bus line in the city?
The number one bus line in the United States is Wilshire Boulevard.
Wilshire Boulevard. So everything comes off Wilshire. So
Right.
if Wilshire, and the other thing too, and I want to ask the MTA to look at, even if you go east from a hard day's night, because today's Beatles Day in Los Angeles, working in West Los Angeles, you get on the 725, right? Did I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
And you come east. What if you came east on Wilshire Boulevard, then you got on Little East San Vicente, and you went East San Vicente to Venice, and you came Venice in. I mean, I know you got it all on Wilshire, but I think there's options that should be made available to people who either live off or work off of Wilshire and go to population areas. I think we're all stuck on Wilshire, but I often see buses lined up tremendously. Mr. Rosendahl, though, but you want to see us invest in this $250,000 to make the study.
To get a final study.
Right,
So that
okay.
June of 2010, we know if it's a good idea.
All right, but also I want them to look at those options off of Wilshire
I
a little,
agree with you.
okay? Even to Century City. Because if it all comes out of the metro at Western, you'd have an option. The key is safety, speed, and connection. That's the key to a transit system. You know what the key to a power system is?
No.
Generation, transmission, and distribution. So you got
Thank you,
that.
Mr. LeBron.
All right, so I support Mr. Rosendahl.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Alarcon.
Mr. Kretz, you don't have a problem with the EIR?
Pardon?
You don't have a problem with the EIR?
Um,
I couldn't tell what
I have questions about the whole project,
Uh-huh.
but the EIR strikes me as something that might answer those questions rather than just leaving them floating out there. So
You're
I
okay
actually-
with the EIR?
I, at least for now,
But then
minus hearing a good argument to the contrary, I'm
You're okay.
inclined to think that's a good idea.
I like your tie.
Okay, we just had an
Excuse me
informal
for that Salma
discussion.
Banj moment.
Man, I've been with you all day. You haven't said anything.
Okay, let me just say this, folks, we have 13 public comment cards. We could do one of two things. We could obviously go through them now. There were some people who wanted to watch the president at 5 o'clock. You're going to lose that opportunity. And we could do this on the council floor, or we could just pass this out of committee if we have the votes and go for that $210,000 and get the project done. I would ask those who have been waiting for so long, would you like to talk? Because if you do, we'll go through it. They do. They're not.
I move a 1-minute comment instead of the usual 2.
Okay, colleagues, if we did a 1-minute comment?
I understand that, but we're going to run out of time. You know, if you can speak it in 1 minute, the same thing is over at MTA. If you need more time, the chair will give it to you.
Okay, let's
Gotta do it in
let's
1
move
minute.
forward, colleagues, if it's okay. You got up to 2 minutes. Try to do it in 1 minute if you want to move on and go on. But it will be my recommendation to my colleagues to approve the $210,000, take it to the council, and get a full EIR that gives Mr. Koretz and all of us at the table a real understanding
Second.
of what the issues are. Okay, I don't want to do a motion till the public comment because we do have cards on it.
Reverse my second.
Ask staff to stay on the side. And let me ask Judy,
Staff on the
I'm
side.
saying Redmond, is that right? Come on up. And how about Sun Young, Young? Come on up. How about Esperanza, Masters, I think? Oh, very good. Is that Rosa?
Rosa Miranda.
Mira, come on up as well. And then we'll just keep quickly going through it. The hope is this, that you can clearly state and don't be redundant with each other and saying different things so that we can move forward with this process. We can just start now, if we could, with, is that Judy?
Yes.
Please. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Redmond, and I'm a member of the Planning Committee of the Bus Riders Union. When the decision was made in 2007 to fully implement the Wilshire bus-only lane, the bus riders were extremely pleased. I commend the leadership of this committee, and especially Chairman Rosendahl and former Chair Wendy Gruhl for moving on that commitment. I look forward to your environmental leadership, Council Member Koretz, as the newest member of the committee on supporting the Wilshire bus-only lane. Today, I'm here to ask you to adopt the staff recommendation to approve and move forward with the full EIR process as the next step in the implementation of the bus-only lanes for Wilshire Boulevard. Times are hard for all of us, those of low income, the unemployed, students, the elderly, disabled, and others who depend on buses. I, like thousands of others, are dependent on the Wilshire buses to go to work, seek jobs, get to and from UCLA, and maneuver everyday life. More importantly, we depend on buses to get from point A to point B in a timely manner. The implementation of the Wilshire bus-only lane is the least this committee can do to lessen the burden of bus riders. This project is a small step for bus-only lanes, but a huge step for mobility. It is encouraging to know that there is insightful and progressive leadership in LA City Council. We commend you on bold actions and commitment to a first-class transit system. This is an opportunity for this body to demonstrate environmental leadership, prioritizing moving people versus pacifying drivers stuck in traffic, which can only lead to more traffic. I, as has this committee, have been working towards this goal for 4 years, and I will continue to do so until the ribbon is cut.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Sun Young?
I'll keep my comments short since we want our members to speak. I just want to point out, once again, commend the last 4 years of leadership that this body has provided, really turning around what was a project that was unanimously voted against in 2000, and in 7 years this project was unanimously approved because of this leadership body. Let me just highlight that this project has been recognized as a meritable project by the federal government, by leeway of the federal government funding it. In fact, FDA gave it the highest rating a project could get under their competitive guidelines. And as this body moves forward today with the EIR process and move this project forward, we're sending a clear signal to the federal government around LA's commitment to both effective and sustainable transit development, and more so it'll set a precedent around our commitment towards that and why LA deserves then more funding from the federal government in the future for transit projects. So once again, I urge you and commend you for adopting the motion today.
Thank you very much for your comments. Esperanza?
Good afternoon, Esperanza Martinez on behalf of the Bus Riders Union. So first and foremost, I feel hopeful that there seems to be consensus that we do need to move forward to do the full EIR process. Every single step in the Wilshire Bus-Only Lanes project has been difficult, and we also understand that the decisions to decrease Automobile use is also a difficult one, but we know is also a necessary one. So we want to be able to put this environmental and transit breakthrough into perspective, because we know the rest of the world is looking to the United States to really lead in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we know that the country is looking to LA specifically. So as the Federal Transit Administration has put its faith and money behind Los Angeles, we also know that they're looking to us to make sure that we spend this money. If the money doesn't get spent, it could set a really bad precedent for any other future projects that we want to bring to this county. So we look forward to this process, and we'll be here every step of the way.
Thank you very much for that. Rosa.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rosa Miranda y soy miembro del Sindicato de Pasajeros.
Good afternoon, my name is Rosa Miranda, and I'm a member of the Bus Riders Union.
Soy una madre dependiente del transporte público y es una molestia transitar en calles como la Wilshire, donde el tráfico es pesado, y ahora que tenemos la oportunidad de tener cambios, no queremos que un proyecto con tanta promesa sea detenido.
So I'm a mother of 3, and I am transit dependent. I ride the Wilshire line frequently, and it is horrible to ride the 720 when it is extremely congested, and we really hope that now that we have this amazing opportunity that it's not held up.
Yo tengo un niño de 9 años que sufre de asma desde hace 4 años, causando fuertes ataques por la espesa contaminación, y es triste cuando tenemos que ir al hospital y pensar que cambios como el que van a votar hoy son la clave para el futuro sano para mi niño y miles de otros en la ciudad. Su voto hoy es un voto por los pulmones de miles.
So I have a 9-year-old son that has asthma, and for the last 4 years, he's been having, his asthma attacks have been worse and worse, and we know that that's because of the poor air quality in this city, and it's sad to know that sometimes we have to rush him to the hospital late at night on the bus, and I'm thinking about the changes that are necessary and that are on the brink here in the city, which will be, the Wilshire bus-only lane will be very key for the future health of my son and for many others in the city.
Este sería un ejemplo para todo el condado y les pido que aprueben el próximo paso. El Estado federal ha hecho su parte y ahora les pido que nos apoyen y está en sus manos traer mejorías en nuestra movilidad, y es preocupante ser la ciudad más contaminada de todos los Estados Unidos.
The Wilshire bus-only lane will set a major example for the rest of the county. And we hope that you all are on board and move forward with this critical next step in the environmental impact report process.
Les aplaudo su valor hasta el día de hoy y les motivo a tomar el siguiente paso. Todos los pasajeros de la calle Wilshire y yo se los agradecemos.
So I applaud your courage today, and I hope that you continue to be motivated in the next few months, and for me and on behalf of other people that ride the Wilshire line. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much, the 4 of you. Could I ask Marlena Morris to come up, and Caroline Spencer, if I'm saying it right, Charles Edelson, and is that Dr. Jerry Brown? 4 of them. Ms. Morris, you're first.
I'm Marlena Morris. I live on the corridor. There are currently 51 high-rise and mid-rise buildings on the Wilshire corridor, 51 buildings. They will all be greatly impacted by a bus-only agenda. 34 of those high-rises have their exits and entrances only onto Wilshire Boulevard. They will be the most impacted for their garbage collection, mail delivery, other deliveries, ambulance and fire services, move-ins, move-outs, and the constant construction which is ongoing in all of these buildings. It will be dangerous for the occupants of these buildings to get onto Wilshire with a bus only, as they will have to drive out into the second lane around buses approaching, and it's difficult to view the oncoming traffic. There are approximately 12 jut-outs, plus the long jut-out at the golf course to be removed. these were supposed to be paid for by developers, but now it looks like the citizens, taxpayers will have to pay for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I'm sure the EIR is going to look at those buildings and address your concerns, which I appreciate you articulating. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm Caroline Spencer. I live at 10316 Wilkins Avenue, 924 Los Angeles. I'm here today to represent Comstock Hills Homeowners Association. We're an association of approximately 300 homes south of Wilshire Boulevard, west of the LA Country Club. Each member of the Transportation Committee should have copies of a letter dated October 6, 2008, from our Homeowners Association stating reasons why we strongly oppose the dedicated bus lane from Comstock Avenue through Westwood to the 405. So I won't go into those issues, but I will say that I was caught in the horrible gridlock west of the 405. It took me 40 minutes to go 2 blocks until I could get to a point where I could turn and get off of the street. We have no alternative streets between the 405 and Beverly Hills to go to.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Charles?
My name is Charles Edelson. I'm a professional engineer registered with the state of California. I start off by saying I support the $210K for the study. My concern is that the council and the committee have been misled through the years by the MTA on this matter. I have a briefing here that I gave to Councilman Pure, Weiss. I hope to give it to Paul Corris soon. I'd like to outline eight problems that I see. First of all, per the DOT studies, it increases the delays. Second, it puts traffic on the residential streets, which roughly parallel. 3, contrary to the MTA, it will decrease the persons moved per day. I can show you that with their own numbers. Fourth, the plan reverses the current plan reverses the 2001 EIR studies. Let me continue for a few more minutes. Much of this work, much of this effort is based on Curitiba, Brazil experience, which was studied in 1996 by Yaroslavsky, but by Mr. Reardon. By 1998, the Curitiba system was breaking down, and they were making plans for elevated roadways instead. One of the charts I have in here shows the DOT studies, which said that there will be a 122% increase in delay. That was in a report to the council in 2007, so I don't agree with what was stated to you before. The DOT also said that the traffic modeling was inadequate, and as an engineer I looked into that and I think it was grossly inadequate. The EIR in 2002 leaves the mitigation in the Westwood area, the cost of those mitigations up to the city to bear. I think you should keep that in mind. So to summarize, I'd like the opportunity to present an updated briefing to each of you to give you some more of the facts so you'll not be misled anymore.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to your input with the EIR group as well. That'd be very helpful. Doctor?
Yeah, my name is Jerry Brown. I live in the Condo Canyon area of Wilshire. Much of what I had to say has already been said. I would like to emphasize the difficulties that'll be encountered by people living in the buildings as far as altered patterns of ingress and egress, a major increase in traffic on streets parallel to Wilshire Boulevard. I would like to emphasize the fact that in 2002, the MTA specifically excluded the Condo Canyon area because it felt that this was the fastest moving segment of Wilshire Boulevard. Currently, a couple of years ago, Councilman Rosendahl had a trial run in his councilmanic district and asked that it be discontinued because it was imposing an unfair burden on the residents of his councilmanic area without the the participation of other jurisdictions. In fact, nothing has changed. There will be no participation of other jurisdictions with the current plan as outlined by the MTA. Specifically, the major impacts to traffic in our area are at the intersection of Wilshire and Santa Monica Boulevard and through the entire stretch of Beverly Boulevard, and then the absolutely horrific problem at the 405, which is not going to be mitigated by anything. MTA, I believe, is proposing to remove 5 feet of sidewalk under the freeway. That will essentially make it impossible for people to walk on that route.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. And just for the record, let you know that when I got elected to this job, they had a bus-only lane for 1 mile in my district with no connecting to anywhere else, and it was horrendous. I did call all the electeds along the route, and no one wanted to cooperate at that point. So I withdrew that 1 mile pending this analysis to see if we could do an actual route, because I'm committed to buses being an efficient way to move ourselves around. But that was what happened with me, and it was true. I called everybody, and nobody was into it at that point. So I said, well, let's withdraw it. Let's go through this process, which took a couple of years to get to this point where we are today. Those questions I expect to be addressed in the EIR, so I look forward to your continued participation in the process. Thank you, all 4 of you. Sandy Brown, Joe Linton, Dorothy Lee. I don't see Dr. Clyde Williams. Anybody see Dr. Williams anywhere?
Back to elsewhere.
He's back to somewhere. He's not here. Arnold Sachs, we don't see him either. Okay, so I would say this is the last of the questions that we have here from the public. And so if we could start with Sandy Brown.
Thank you. I'm Sandy Brown, Humble Westwood property owners. We're 1,100 homes north of Wilshire, right along the corridor. I just want to ask the committee to make certain that public outreach is not as abysmal as the MTA has just completed with 4 hearings. The emails that were sent out had absolutely no reason to be sent to the people that they were. None of the condo buildings were notified. None of the homeowner associations were notified. People showed up and they stated, yeah, we would like that, or we wouldn't like that. They didn't even know that they were there, that had for a reason that had anything to do with the environmental impact report. So there has to be a much better process for public input and public outreach. Also, the MTA has to focus on 2012 and not just look into the future of 2020. We're going to be stuck with all of this traffic that is repeated over and over again in the 2002 EIR. So we're not so interested in 2020. We're also interested in how we're going to get around in 2012 and what's going to happen to businesses and traffic during that period of time. The other issue that I wanted to say was, again, that we were excluded from the 2002 EIR because traffic runs very well between Comstock and Selby. And if you would like to go out there, you will even see LAPD giving tickets and with their radar, because traffic zips along PM and AM peak. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Technical question, Ms.
Yes.
Brown. The streets on Wilshire Boulevard west of Comstock are wider than the streets east of Comstock, right?
That's correct. Around LA Country Club.
Yeah, it
Right.
is 6 lanes only, but there's 7 lanes west of it.
There's
so
one,
that's
yes.
8.
Right.
This
You would
lane.
get a bottleneck at Comstock and Wilshire
When you go east.
when you go east.
Right, we should have that down. I want to see it on a map, DOT, in this report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Linton.
My name's Joe Linton. I'm here today for the Green LA Transportation Work Group. We're a coalition of environmental justice groups, from bicyclists to bus riders to transit folks to pedestrians, and we agree. We don't agree on everything, but we actually are strongly in support of this project, and want to let you know that this is really important for the environment in Los Angeles. Councilmember Labange, a trivia question: what is the highest capacity roadway in the United States?
I want you to answer, Joe.
It's a bus-only lane on the Lincoln Tunnel between New York and New Jersey. And if we're looking at increased population in Los Angeles and getting people around, we're looking at not
we can't widen a lot of our streets. We need to increase capacity. The way to do that is to increase transit, increase the effectiveness of transit. It's the right thing to do for the environment.
Build a subway out Wilshire?
Say again?
Build a subway out Wilshire? Yeah, I support a subway out Wilshire.
It's that too, yes.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Out Wilshire to Santa Monica, to Century City.
Dorothy Lee.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Lee from Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition and the Green LA Transportation Working Group, and I just want to say that we're really supportive of the decision to move forward with the EIR process, and I'll make this quick, but the Wilshire bus only lane is a part of complete streets and living streets, and as a cyclist and a pedestrian, we are in support of this because it really is a part of a vision of a street that accommodates all users.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for your public...
Question for the coalition. In the improvement to Santa Monica Boulevard, has that met some of your needs to your satisfaction?
Oh, the bike lane?
On Santa Monica between Century City, thank you.
Some
improvement, thank you very much.
Well, again, I want to apologize to everybody that's been here for so long. It was beyond our control, frankly, to start the meeting on time. So come on back up. You can respond to some of the questions or any more additional questions from my colleagues.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make one minor technical corrections in the recommendation. Recommendation number 2 was about directing DOT to encumber $210,000 in Prop C local return funds. That item can be deleted. We would just change the number 3. Authorize DOT to reimburse Metro for up to $210,000. That doesn't change, but we add that from Transportation Grant Fund number 655, Wilshire Boulevard Bus Lanes Project account. Okay. So the funding source will be a little different, but that has already been approved in the previous year.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any more comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a comment right now, right here. I want to know if when they study this here, they can look, Paul, between Comstock and Westwood, because over the years, there's been tremendous development there, and there have been requirements to widen streets larger than what the capacity is. One of the disappointments of the Santa Monica Boulevard improvement is they widened everything on Santa Monica Boulevard, but once they got to 405, it's a bottleneck. So is it possible, if there's a breakout that meets the needs of the MTA and moving buses safely, but also deals with the additional capacity of street? I think it's more than 120 feet at some parts of that part of Wilshire Boulevard. Do we know that, Mr. Engineer? So more than 120 feet. So that's more than a major highway. So I think from Comstock to Westwood, they should look at what alternatives may be there that may satisfy the need of the bus and its movement, but also satisfy the need of the usual cutouts, because the curb line is not straight there. There's a lot of back, there's additional width, in my knowledge, of the area from past MTA service. Don't mean to jump in another man's district, but I wanted to lay that on you as a way to look at that as an option.
Tom is a very strong participant in this committee, and I enjoy that, and I look forward to that. What I would look forward to, unless Mr. Koretz has any more questions, is a motion to go forward with the full EIR, but also I appreciated some of the public comments about the outreach. I'd like a report back, and I'd like the report back on the outreach and the strategy for the EIR, just an informational report that we're all comfortable that we're doing the right thing. It is now the 9th, and I think, how much time would you need to give us a clear report back? A couple of 60 days, 90 days? I don't want to get to June of 2010 and have questions that needed to be resolved earlier in this process.
November 15th.
We have, as part of the recommendations, there is a report back in 90 days. We can include the outreach and strategy for the EIR, so if 90 days is okay.
Comfortable, colleagues?
Yes.
Mr. Correa, do you want to make the motion to go forward with this 210,000?
Yes, but I want to transfer what I said to Mr. Correx, and I want to second the motion that they look at Comstock West that Mr. Correx.
But Mr. Kretz, you're going to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, he makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of moving forward with this, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you all very much for coming. We're going to have this again before the city council. The bottom line is this: I want an absolutely clear EIR. I want absolutely every question that was brought up by community that is now on the record analyzed, as well as the outreach, so everybody feels comfortable it's been done. We do have $22 million of federal money sitting there. It would be a great idea if this all made sense, but we're going to let the process give us that kind of clarity.
Very good, Mr. Chief.
Okay? Please. Yeah. Now we're going to go through, this issue is done, item number 3. Now we're going to go through the rest of the agenda, and I want to thank you all again for your patience, for waiting a couple of hours the way you did. And what we'll like to do now is go through, colleagues, the items that we have here. Some we might be able to do on consent, some we want to continue for obvious reasons. Could we have item number 1?
Item number 1 is a CAO report relative to the transit and bike path maintenance contract.
Okay, the bicycle coordinator for the city has left the building, but I think we approve this because it's needed, but then we send it, open it up if we need to talk about it in council.
Does anybody disagree with that, colleagues? Is there a second, Mr. Alarcon, for that? Okay, so moved and unanimously moved forward on subject item number 1. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is the DOT report on the potential new parking meters. I think we were going to continue that to the next meeting to have a full discussion on where we were.
This is a serious issue to really understand where we're going. Obviously, at this time, we can't do it. Do I have a motion to continue this item?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Alarcon, we'd move it until the 23rd to discuss this more thoroughly. So moved. Item number 2 has been continued to the 23rd. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is the Lavange Parks Perry Reyes motion relative to special events at major venues. DOT has been in coordination with these major venues and has sent out letters. We would recommend that we continue it to the next meeting and have a report back from the department as they continue to work with these entities.
Colleagues, any comment on that recommendation from staff? So moved then. It is continued until then. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a Labange Weezer motion relative to E-plate vehicles.
Yeah, members, I think we should have a report from the police department on this here, so I think we should continue it.
And someone is suggesting we continue this one for 60 days.
Very good. Give it a little time.
Because the police department is dealing with the issue. There's something that's going through the commission, so I think that gives us time for them to work out and then have a report back.
Are we in agreement, colleagues, to continue that item 60? Or Mr. Alarcon, you want to say anything about it?
Is DOT involved in that?
DOT, do you want to comment on that at this
Parking
point?
enforcement?
No, the next one, the E-plate, downtown. Parked around the corner.
Yeah, we're on item number 5. 60 days is great, they're saying.
But they are involved in the sense of regulating and some of the curb lanes.
All right, that was the question, Mr. Alarcon. Is DOT involved? And yes, the answer is yes. We'll get the LAPD and others engaged, and we will move on this in 60 days, okay? And item number 6.
Item number 6 was a DOT report on the department's organizational structure, and I think you wanted to continue that to the next meeting so you can have a presentation from the general manager. Yeah.
Yes, in fact, she was prepared, obviously, to do that today, but due to circumstances under control, we couldn't do it. And I would like to obviously continue that so that she can give us a full-blown report about the org chart and structure and those engaged in it. That completes the agenda items for today. Any comments, colleagues, on anything else? Do you have a motion to adjourn, Mr. Alarcon? We do. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming.